I really want to build on all of the themes that were discussed today. Many of you will know the social investment business, have heard of the organization, in many cases actually seen through who's here, have received money from the organization. A lot of this is sort of complex, changing rapidly, and very exciting. And in many ways where we sit, part of our job, we feel, is to understand what's happening, appreciate the changing sources of funding, and really take that on board so that we continue to face organizations and provide them the type of financing that they need. We started out as this organization, Social Investment Business Foundation, and really we've responded to changes in the funding environment so that we can then invest and support organizations like you guys in the room. And at the end of my talk, I really want to sort of give a sense of some of that complexity, because I think we often get questions about where our sources of money are, and share that with you, but then translate it ultimately so you get a sense of where our money is available for you guys to take on and do the work that you do. We've heard quite a bit around some of the innovations that we're seeing at the moment. SIB actually started 12 years ago, pre the crisis. And really the idea was, could we respond to the needs of the sector? And sort of our byline is the sense of providing simple finance to extraordinary charities and social enterprises. And it was the time when there was government money available. We were set up with money, £50 million from the Home Office. There was money made available from the Department of Communities and Local Government, over £100 million. Department of Health, £100 million social investment fund focused on healthcare. And the Future Builder is one of the largest, celebrating its 10-year anniversary this year, of money available for organizations. And really, our job when we set up was really to try and connect some of that money, particularly from government sources, through to frontline organizations around the country. And ultimately, even though there are these different sources in government, combinations of grant, loan only, equity, quasi-equity, the idea that we've continued to feel was our job was to translate some of that and provide this simple finance for extraordinary charities and social enterprises. And then to build on Matt's work around the sense of ladder financing, that's really one of the big evaluations, conclusions that we came to. In fact, later this year, there's going to be an independent study done on the 10 years of Future Builders. And some of the lessons learned from those experiences that we had, including, of course, some of the things that didn't work, that we want to share, not just in terms of how we as an organization have adapted, but as the increasing amount of next generation funds come up. And you saw social and sustainable capital earlier, where I spend half of my time, and I'll explain that in a moment, so that we actually can stand on the shoulders of some of those experiences as well. And many people on the panel, our earlier speakers, Cabinet Office, Big Society Capital, are feeding into that work that Boston Consulting Group are doing. So that's a report, hopefully not inundated with reports, I bet you that you are. But that could be interesting, framed in lessons learned and what that means. And I guess really when the crash happened and we sort of emerged from it, I would argue we are emerging from it. And actually maybe just an observation of something that I found very powerful about the speeches so far today. I was in Birmingham last week for one of the party conferences. I've been to a few of them. You know, we're helping co-convene these fringe events for social investment to try and influence policymakers, just as you're saying, and feeding from some of the 1,300 organizations we've worked with. And actually that conversation repeatedly was on the economy, the economy, the economy. And what I found great today is actually we hear society as well, and the economy and society and how that combines. And it's nice to be back in Birmingham a week later to actually remember that key part, that it's not just about the economy that we're building, but it's a stronger society as well. So as we know, of course, there was less money from the government. Those large funds, sort of money in and money out, wasn't the case anymore. We found much more targeted work that was happening, and so we worked with the Cabinet Office on a thing called My Community Rights, which I'll expand on. I'll expand on all of these in a moment. I just want to give you a sense of the different things happening. Community rights really focused on enabling organizations to acquire local community assets where they live. An investment and contract readiness fund, which the Minister kindly referenced earlier on, run by Cabinet Office. And we've worked with other organisations, so Matt mentioned Big Potential, £10 million fund that we are the manager of, really with this sense of how do we put a central place where investment readiness again can be spoken about. And there's a great report that came out as part of this, introducing social investment. I encourage you all to read that, diagnostic tools and so on. But then at the same time, we saw some sense from European money potentially available as grants in, so that we could make loans out. And SIB, we received an endowment from the Department of Communities and Local Government, put some of our own money in to really focus on local impact funds. So a little bit around what has been discussed quite a bit of times this morning, loans at less than £250,000. There's a masterclass this afternoon. Chris Dadson, my colleague, who's on secondment from the Cabinet Office, and Val Jones, who leads Social Enterprise Northwest, are talking about the first pilot fund in Liverpool. But as we saw some of the government money shrink and be a little bit more target and other sort of discrete and specific interventions, of course we saw a lot of other noise happen and actually a lot more money come in. And what we found is that a lot of that money needs a regulated fund manager. So we've partnered with an organization called Social and Sustainable Capital, who have put together innovative structures, blending different forms of capital so that they could provide more money for social finance, for simple finance to extraordinary charities and social enterprise. And really what I want to say is there's all that happening in the background. We get asked that a lot, and I think it's important to share that there is a lot of structuring happening, but ultimately our job as social investors is to absorb that complexity and provide you with the sorts of funding that's needed. And it isn't, unfortunately, a case where there's more large tickets of money available for us to just raise and disperse. Actually, in some ways, I think, frankly, that's quite a good thing. It needs a little bit more effort, but that we can then provide some of that finance to you guys. And what that means for the ladder of financing is that we really want to understand where we can play a role. At each of these stages, I have grants at the bottom, as I think it's an important point to emphasize. Some organizations and some parts of charities and social enterprises are and should be grant funded, and there's no need to be apologetic about that, particularly if you think there are social investors in the room. It's weird the way that tones can sometimes happen, unnecessary. But I guess we all recognize where there are opportunities for these income revenue streams where returnable finance can be utilized, and we're working on these grants for investment readiness. We think the sub £50,000 market continues to be quite difficult. I mentioned this local impact fund in Liverpool, which is the pilot, and some larger loans that are available by social and sustainable capital. So let me just, it's interesting, when I was preparing for this, at some level I was thinking, do I even go into some of the source of money? Do you just want to know where the money is? How do you get it? And can I just get on with that bit? And of course this is the point, ultimate point of my talk. And these are the sources of capital available. But I think I wanted to share with you some of the challenges and complexity, but also some of the excitement that exists out there, again, around this sense of us raising that money, absorbing and figuring out that complexity to get that right money to you. So let me just finish around explaining a couple of what these are. My Community Rights actually has reopened. There are feasibility grants, £5,000 to £10,000 available if you are interested in capacity building, providing services, or acquiring local assets. The deadline is the 31st of October. I spoke to somebody here working in a local community garden centre in a deprived area in Birmingham. There are stages of grant money available for that. There's Big Potential, which Matt talked about, funded by the Big Lottery, looking at that sense of investment readiness, a little bit earlier stage, and providing grants again for specialist providers to evaluate how more capital can be made available. There's the Investment and Contract Readiness Fund. We had Midlands together, of course, ask a great question. Whitney sits on the panel in terms of investors feeding in. And this is really exciting, where grants up to 150K get made available to specialist providers like Readiness and other great organizations mentioned earlier, clearly so, and many others, to help you guys understand what the requirements are from social investors. And in many ways, because social investors actually sit on the committee and the panel, kind of gets rid of excuses for people to say, oh, there's no pipeline, oh, I can't invest, oh, these, it kind of is trying to strip away all of that to say, well, what is it that investors, and as an investor, I think that's good. I think it's right for us to have that pressure placed upon us, to feed in early what is required, what are the bits that need to change, whether it's on the impact side, whether it's on the financial sustainability side, the management team, the trustees, and so on. So that actually this is coming together and we're seeing huge successes. As the Minister talked about, for every £1 grant made, now we've actually seen over £35 of investment capital raised. Really exciting, and we're working with many organisations to try and get funding for an ICRF too. The Local Impact Fund, which is piloted in Liverpool, interesting, and Melanie knows this well, the 6 local economic partnerships, all of whom are represented, I'm excited to say, and congratulations to you here, haven't yet signed up to the local impact funds, although we're having some very constructive conversations. And this could be a very interesting part. We're speaking again to other people to understand that sense of blended finance, understand how to make we work with Key Fund very closely to understand organizations who have this expertise in providing these loans, how to get them to be sustainable as well, so that they can continue to provide what's clearly come up again and again today, a key part of what you guys are demanding. So it's an interesting pilot. And finally, social and sustainable capital. I mentioned I spent half of my time there, a fairly new social intermediary that is set up really to, itself actually interestingly as a social enterprise, with the majority of its profits flowing back up to SIB, the charity. Providing loans from 250k up, it says to 1 million, actually it can even go up to 3 million. And what we're seeing, particularly for many of you, and Nick talked about this a little bit earlier, where some of the bigger contracts are being subcontracted out, and charities and social enterprises can act as the prime contractors. That's something that really excites us. We probably all have a strong view whether it's right or not, and such a minister is not here, of should government contracts be subcontracted or not. I guess we're not taking a stance publicly, if you will, on that, but we are saying if charities and social enterprises can be the ones to compete against some of these large private sector firms, we want to be there to support and fund that happening, which I think will be a very important and exciting development in the market. So that's my lot. I have a quick case study of an organisation based in Walsall who received sort of 3 tranches of money that in many ways captures our journey, a mix of loan and grant from community builders to purchase land and buildings to create this great community hub called the Goldmine. A further blend of loan and grant from future builders focused on the stamp duty and legal costs. And more recently, actually, receiving a grant from the investment contract and Readiness Fund to repurpose the building. So there is, of course, as you can imagine, having touched almost 1,300 organisations, a fair number in West Midlands, like I said, many actually of you here that we've worked with. And that's how we're thinking about the ladder of financing and playing a role. And I guess ultimately, if we believe our job is to absorb that complexity and provide that simple finance to extraordinary charities, social enterprises, we really would value your feedback as you've given already, but even more, we have a stand next door to tell us what it is you're looking for so that we can provide that capital to you.